Over-tightening of jars. This is a very common mistake that is seen very repetitively on social media posts going, why does my jar lid look like this?
Yeah, you were guilty of this for a while where you were like, I'm just going to crank it on there before we put in the canner. So you don't need to, be the Hulk and screw it on as tight as you can. You can do what's called finger tight, which means like you just tighten it and that's good. Not like you're going to put it back in the fridge and it might get shook up or something.
And you will know if you over tightened it because the lid, when coming out of the processor, either the water bath or pressure canner, it will have buckled. It will have pinched up, and the jar, the lid, the metal flat portion will be blown up because the air cannot do, the science can't do what it needs to do in order to properly seal the jar.
Right.
So not following a safe recipe, but I got it online.
Right. So you want to use recipes from a safe, reputable source. So this includes things like bulk canning, any sort of master
bulk
canner.
canning, what is that? freshpreserving.com.org?
Okay. A master canner, a Better Homes and Gardens, any sort of master canner. Taste of Home is another one that has good canning recipes. And those are probably the main three for, if you go to the library and you're like, I'm going to check out some canning books, you want to kind of stay within like the last 15 years or so. It's hard to wrap your head around this, but if you find something from the 90s, it's not within 15 years.
The 90s, like early 90s, that was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but a lot of people think like the 90s was 10 years ago.
Well, the 90s is 30 years from the 90s was the 60s, which is the same distance as it now from there.
Okay, just stop. So anyway, I mean, the 90s were a great time. I had a fun time, and I'm so glad social media was not around.
But it's a safe thing.
You want to make sure last 15 years, so early 2000s, absolute max.
It's nice to collect the recipe jar, the bulk canning books of the classic, the old style ones, but it's not safe. Now, what does one do if they have an old recipe that they would like to use to honor a past loved one who was a very active canner? How do they find out to make it safe?
You could reach out to a master canner and ask them to review the recipe, and there's no shame in that. And a lot of times they don't even have to tweak that much. But I just want to explain, you're probably thinking, like, how has food science really changed that much? Well, as a society, our food science has really changed. So tomatoes are less acidic than
just the density of the food, too.
Right.
Yeah.
So let me just finish here.
Yeah.
So tomatoes are less acidic than they used to be. So now you have to add acid to your canned tomatoes or your pasta sauce, salsa, what have you. Same thing with, jams and jellies. Those recipes may not have varied a lot, but you don't know. You don't know if the sugar content has changed or something where you may need to add more pectin, things like that. So because our food system is always changing, we're getting, as a society, further and further away from these heirloom varieties and original cultivar of produce. This is why things change. And also, even with pressure canning, we learned Joey's parents used to can green beans with a water bath canner, and now that's no longer safe. So it's just a matter of, as things change over time, and just like people are living longer because they're not canning questionable things and questionable methods, because food safety has changed as well. For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.